Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. Happy, it's not hump day, but it's past the hump day. And believe me, right now, I was just going to say, we're getting bombed here, not with live turkeys like at WKRP in Cincinnati, but snow. And shocking, Buffalo would have snow. But Russ, I went out for my normal morning coffee at 8 o'clock in the morning, and there was a couple inches. So I said, why not? I'll go out. And as I was going into the city of Buffalo, the other way, coming toward the Buffalo airport, there had been an accident where somebody had gone off one of the exits from the expressway to the thruway, and it had traffic backed up about 3 miles. So,
wow,
that was, and then as I'm driving in, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And at that point, it's like, okay, I may as well keep going here because you know what I'm saying? It's like all I'm going to do is turn back and be stuck in traffic. So, I came back and the 2 inches turned into a foot. So in about 3 hours, it went from a light dusting to heavy snow. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Start us off the pre-show. Go ahead.
All right. Let's talk Antonio Brown. So here's where we are in the saga. It looks like he released a bunch of texts. And, of course, people were waiting on this like this is a smoking gun with Bruce Arians, and it really isn't. All it is Antonio Brown saying my ankle hurts, and Bruce Arians is like, well, we're playing. Everybody's playing, so call me. And here's the crux of it. Antonio Brown could show me 100 pictures of him somewhere getting his ankle worked on, whether it's with the trainer or his own person, and I still won't believe him because he also gave a bad accounting of, well, they shot me up with this painkiller that the PA says is too strong. And so then it's like, why did you do it? Nobody held a gun to your head. You don't have to do it. And then all of a sudden, you find out that he's getting also treated by Alex Guerrero, who, if you remember, was with the Patriots and Tom Brady, and Belichick kicked him out because he didn't like the way that guy was acting. And of course, Antonio Brown goes, hey, I gave that guy $100,000 and he didn't do anything for me. And it's like, this is why you can't let these kinds of guys, there should be rules in this sport, but the NFL is the wild west, but guys shouldn't be able to sign on teammates.
And he's asking for a refund. I don't think this guy is going to give it to him unless now.
But it's a conflict of interest anyhow when you have players like Brady and then you have this trainer and now the trainer's trying to hit up all the other players. And if he's getting like $100,000 a player, just imagine the money he's pulling in. And this is where I think Belichick probably was upset about.
Yeah, I was going to bring up is like, gee, personal trainer Brian McNamee?
Yeah.
Like Victor Conti. But okay, I don't think that's going on. Although the NFL turns a blind eye to steroids. But no, the interesting thing here was, and I'm sure that nobody will believe him unless he produces the X-rays, but that Antonio Brown is basically saying I have chip fractures and a torn ligament. And, if they shot him up, then that's an excuse for he didn't look like his ankle was hurting him when he was waving goodbye to the fans at the stadium. But if he was shot up, then he wasn't feeling any pain on it. But I mean, really, I think that the texts that have been released and the statement, right now, like as of Monday, everybody thought Antonio Brown is a kook, and like Funky said,
I still think that.
But I think there could be some, I think, negative thing here towards Arians.
Oh, I'm sure there's a little something negative here towards Arians, but at the end of the day, like everything Brown complained about was his own fault, and he could have prevented it. He didn't have to get shot up. He didn't have to have Alex Guerrero pretend that he's treating him for whatever. Maybe even Antonio Brown thought under Alex Guerrero's care that he was vaccinated. Who knows what this guy's thinking? That's the whole thing about all of this. If Brown wasn't losing money, we wouldn't know about any of this, Mike. But the fact that he lost money with the vaccination card and then he got kicked off the team and they didn't want to pay him his last game check, now he's basically trying to dime out and blame everybody else. And this is what Antonio Brown does. He's done this his entire career.
Yeah. All right, let's start the show. X should be joining us any minute. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, January 6th, 2022.
I know Mike has a calendar right next to him. X just not that good, but Mike almost screwed up. I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I was burping. That's what was the problem was, Russ. It just, hey, excuse me. And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast. No insurrection talk here today, and on the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com.
You just had it. I wasn't going to say anything.
No, I said no insurrection talk. So that's
you just said it again.
Jesus Christ. All right, let's start with the games last night. Start with the one that we did a secondary audio broadcast on, which was pretty interesting to do. We'll talk about that later. In the coming.
Thanks for those who tuned in.
Yes. Thank you, especially to Cam Young, who came on and talked with us. The Toronto Maple Leafs beat the Edmonton Oilers, the shorthanded Edmonton Oilers. We'll make that caveat. Without Connor McDavid, without Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who apparently is going to be out for multiple weeks with an injury. Without Derek Ryan and Tyson Berry, McDavid also was COVID. So without a significant chunk, two of their better forwards.
Yep.
Mike Smith played well. I thought that the Leafs were outworked for a sizable chunk of that game. Yeah, sizable chunk. And only in the third period, when Russ's favorite, Ilya Mikheyev, scored the game winner, did the Leafs prevail. Now ended up being 4-2 with an empty netter. But let's talk about the game itself, Russ.
Well, I'm going to talk about Mikheyev first, because we did this thing called the hot seat, and we had a guest on, Peter Harling, and I asked him, do you think Ilya Mikheyev has some upside in this league? Because I like his speed, I like his shot. I feel like he does. Mike didn't feel like he has that much upside, and Peter didn't either. And I was like, okay, well, I disagree. And he did get the game winner, and I was happy for the guy. Now, that doesn't mean Mike doesn't like him. Listen, all Mike was going on was what he's seen in the past. But I'm just saying there's something to him that I could see why they are continuing to play him, because he does have some good speed. He has size. He's got reach. He's got a heck of a shot. You figure at some point it might start to go in for him. And he had a couple of good looks before that happened. So other than that, Campbell played well. He's always played well for the Leafs. We really can't say anything otherwise. Leafs defense was a little loose for when they were losing puck possession. First period, they had no puck possession for like the first 6-7 minutes. I don't know what the deal was. I do want to let everybody know that Mitch Marner hasn't scored a power play goal since February 1st, 2020. I do feel like everybody needs to know that, because Sportsnet flashed it up. The power play was men's amends. It showed some good things. It showed some bad things. But at the end of the day, the Leafs did what they needed to do. Edmonton played a spirited game. Yes. Now, the problem is they just got outmanned in the end. And at the end of the game, you could see Draisaitl was visibly upset. You could see Tippett, was out of there quickly. He basically hauled ass out of there. Now, apparently he was yelling at Bouchard. Somebody was putting on Twitter about something. I don't know what that might have been, because Bouchard had a hell of a third period. But maybe Bouchard said something. I don't know. But the idea was Evan Bouchard played great in that third period. We were questioning in the game, what was he doing, because we didn't really notice him, and he stepped up. So it was an interesting game. I mean, I felt like the young guys for the Edmonton Oilers, Bouchard and McLeod, played good games. Mm-hmm. And some of their other guys were okay. Perlini stepped up big time. That's
like I told you, this is the second game this year that Perlini was in the lineup against the Leafs, and he played like that. I think Perlini only shows up when his relatives in Ontario are watching, because he hasn't really done much this year.
No, he was like that in juniors, though. This is the closest I've seen him play like he played in juniors. So I don't know what's happened to his game. I will tell you who played a really good game, though, and this is a guy who I'd say every couple of years looks good and then doesn't, and it's Colton Sevier. Like, he set up one of the goals, and Yamamoto got an assist on the other. I was happy for that. But yeah, Sevier's pass was really good.
I mean, since scoring his first 3 years in the NHL, Perlini scored 14, 17, and 12. The first two with Arizona, the next with Chicago. The last 2 years, he had 1 goal in 39 games for Detroit, and this year he has 2 goals in 17 games for Edmonton. So, like I said, I think his 2 best games were the 2 games against Toronto.
And that happens, right? There's guys that definitely elevate their game under certain circumstances. We also felt like without McDavid, they were going to try and defend the house as best they could.
And remember, he's the son of Fred Perlini, who played for the Leafs in the early '80s. So there's
a Facebook friend.
Fred Perlini is
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay, touching on Mikheyev first. Right. Okay, he's got 3 goals in 3 games right now. He scored 2 against Ottawa. He scored 1 against Edmonton. 2 goals on the power play when previously he had not been on the power play, so they're giving him an opportunity. It's a contract year for him. He had requested to be traded last offseason because they didn't have the confidence in him to be in the top 6, and that was justified because his shooting percentage in his first 2 years, 8.2 and 6.5. He's been given opportunity. He's been given opportunity in the top 6, playing with Tavares, I don't remember him playing with Matthews, but he did play with Tavares. He has never been able to score. This year, he broke his thumb in the last game of training camp when he had a good camp. And right now, this is optimistic. This is you have to be optimistic based on the way he's played so far. But again, this is another thing. This is a contract year for him. He's a UFA at the end of the year. He wants to make some money. I don't blame him. But right now, because I believe he signed a 2-year deal coming out of ZLC. If he puts up, a prorated 20-25 goals, he could go someplace and make $3.5, $4 million. That won't be in Toronto. I mean, they won't be.
I'll tell you 2 things, Mike. 2 stats. Michael Bunting has a 10.4 shooting percentage. Mm-hmm. Ilya Mikheyev is 23. Right. Ilya Mikheyev is only 4 goals behind the great Michael Bunting.
Russ, he's got 3 goals in 3 games. This is an outlier, is what I'm saying. I mean, okay, if he's shooting 23% after,
he's not going to shoot 23%.
Then shut up.
No, what I am going to say is he's got 3 goals, and the great Michael Bunting only has 7. That's what I'm saying.
Oh my God! All right, so
Bunting had a pretty good game too. He had an assist.
Yes. As for Edmonton, and we won't dwell on them too much because we talked about them a lot yesterday. I have to say, there was a good effort yesterday, and Mike Smith played well. But, there's just open questioning now, Russ, about, the direction of this team. I don't want to misread the look of frustration on Draisaitl's face, but McDavid and Draisaitl, I would be shocked if they are not at the point of, like, after this year talking to Holland about, if this team doesn't go anywhere, here's my list. And I'm not saying like right away, but it's like, I mean, remember, don't say that that's not possible because Jack Eichel was very happy in Buffalo until he wasn't happy in Buffalo. Right. And Buffalo is almost as much as Edmonton is almost as much of a train wreck as Edmonton is. I mean, Edmonton is a higher functioning train wreck, but a train wreck just the same. So I don't know.
I would say this. I think by next year at the deadline, if Edmonton hasn't made any gains, teams are going to inquire about McDavid, and we might hear something about McDavid. Draisaitl might play it cool, though. He might stay because if McDavid leaves, he's the number 1 guy. He could get paid more then, too.
Yeah, I mean,
he can.
I hear you, but I mean, and remember, well, I think that decision will be made early because Draisaitl has 3 years left at 8.5. McDavid has 4 years left at 12.5. Not to say that McDavid won't say, get me out of here before then, but I think Draisaitl is going to go wherever the biggest payday is. And maybe that'll be Edmonton.
And it might be Edmonton if McDavid leaves.
they may have to overpay him to get there to stay.
Well, they're gonna have to overpay him.
I mean, he could say 20%.
Yeah.
And if they say we can't do that, then see ya.
But I think that's what could happen. But I do think we're going to start hearing about it next year if we don't see improvement. And because again, like how many coaches is McDavid going to go through? How many different lineups is he going to go through? He is going to get tired of it at some point. He's probably partially tired of it now.
Yeah. The other game was the Penguins versus the Blues. Penguins win 5-3. The Penguins have won 9 in a row.
Yep.
And I mean, that really sort of snuck up on me because I know they were playing really well. I didn't know that they were playing that well. And again, this is all without Malkin.
No, I knew they were playing that well. I'll tell you what. In this game, they were losing. St. Louis had the lead. Crosby decided he had enough of Mikkola.
Mikko
Mikkola. And
not Michelob.
Mikkola. He started up with them. And look, Crosby's given up like 50 pounds to the guy. He's like 6'4". And Crosby held his own for a little while. And then Mikkola got him a shot on his nose. And Crosby had to get stitches. But it really did ignite his team. Now, here's what was an interesting thing. 2 things really got me. Most times in the NHL, when there's a fight, it doesn't spark the team anymore. It sparked the team because it was Crosby. That's why his line mates got fired up. If it wasn't Crosby, I don't think it would have meant anything. I don't even think they would have come back and won. Because it was Crosby, I felt like it had more impact. Now, it is interesting how in this era, one of the best players in the last decade, it actually has to stand up for himself and do it, where back in the day, Gretzky had guys doing it for him, right? You would never see Gretzky fight a guy like that. It would never have happened. The league probably would have somehow expelled Mikkola if he did that with Gretzky.
Well, okay, and Leaf fans will remember this. There was a Leaf player. He was a fourth line guy, coincidentally named Bill McCreary, not Bill McCreary, the referee,
right?
Who hit Gretzky in a game in Edmonton. I think this was like 81, something like that. Hit him at center ice and knocked him silly. And, of course, like everybody went after him. He maybe played 3 more games in the NHL before they sent him down, and he was never heard from again. And I'll bet you anything that part of it was you deemed to hit our meal ticket. God smites you, Bill McCreary. So, it's like but my question is whether, Brian Burke will say, okay, we need to get not Ryan Reeves. We need to get some physicality here to protect Sid and to protect him. They really don't have anybody like that anymore.
No, but I mean, Rodriguez can certainly handle himself. I've seen him do that.
Yeah, but he's playing too well.
I know. But it is interesting that Crosby did it himself, and they do have a great team bonding thing going there, Mike. It's like, again, Rodriguez got the game winner. He's on the top power play. He has a good shot. Like, there's no reason. Rodriguez was a really good player in college. I'm pretty sure he was on the same line as Eichel.
Yeah. Thank you to Anthony Mangione, who forwarded us this message this update from Frank Cervalli, and also Chris Peters was reporting this.
Yeah, they were on the same line. Sorry.
A list of 15 players that. And this was something that we heard about yesterday from Kevin Allen, that there would be more than a few U.S. college players to be invited by Team USA for the upcoming Olympics. Now there are some here that are KHL players. I'll read them off first. Kenny Agostino, former Leaf, former Calgary Flame.
Good speed.
Let's see here. Andy Milley, former Arizona Coyote. I think he was with Winnipeg too, or New Jersey. Brian O'Neill, who's playing for Jokerit in the KHL. Let's see here. Stephen Kampfer, former Boston Bruin defenseman, playing with Akbars Kazan in the KHL. David Warshawski, former relief, former Penguin.
I remember him.
He's playing in the DEL. Strauss Mann, a goaltender who I don't know.
I don't know him.
No, he's playing for Skieltva in the SHL. Now here you go. Here are the college players. Matty Beniers, Seattle first-round pick, now with Michigan. Noah Cates, Philadelphia Flyers prospect, playing with Minnesota Duluth. Matthew Nyes, Toronto Maple Leafs second-round pick with Minnesota. Ben Myers, an undrafted free agent with Minnesota. Nathan Smith, Minnesota State, a Winnipeg draft pick. Brock Faber, a lot of Minnesota guys here. Brock Faber, LA.
Yeah, Faber. Well, they had the coach of Minnesota, the assistant coach of Minnesota is on the bench.
The
coach of Minnesota. Wait, he's the head coach of Minnesota, but he's an assistant coach for the Olympic team.
An assistant coach to David Quinn. Drew Hellison, Boston College, a Colorado prospect. Aaron Ness, who's an AHL contract with Providence. And Jake Sanderson from North Dakota. Yeah, I mean, that's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 college players. And
and it's Minnesota State Mankato. It's not the Golden Gophers.
Minnesota State. I said Minnesota State. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, Faber is a hell of a talent. There's some good talent there. Obviously, Beniers, like Michigan's going to be without Beniers and Owen Power. That's crazy. This could affect some of the races in college. I'm surprised that the colleges did this, but I don't know what the rules are as far as like schooling and these other things. It always was a gray area, and we've never seen guys go like at this rate.
And according to this, they said the list is still fluid, so that doesn't mean that all of them will accept. I'm sure some of them will, some of them won't. With Canada, Power is somebody we know has been invited. We don't know if he's gonna go. The list that he's
gonna go. Beniers is gonna go
probably. So I mean, hey, like I said, 2018 was an opportunity for these players to play on an international stage. I mean, Troy Terry did. I think Adam Fox was on the U.S., wasn't he in 2018?
In World Juniors, yeah.
No, 2018 in the
2018. You're talking about the Olympics. Sorry.
I think he was. I think he was.
Yeah, he may have been there.
Yeah, because I think he was at Harvard.
Sure, but he may have been.
Yeah, I think he was at Harvard's, and he was a Carolina pick, but he was eligible.
I know Jordan Greenway. He was there.
So,
this is a lot. Like this will affect college hockey. This isn't just you're removing some of these teams' best players.
Yeah. Yes. Now, a couple things here. There's a note here from Renaud Lavoie that the Canadians won't resume activities before January 9th because they've had some COVID positives, and they're not playing any home games between now and January 27th. The news that was announced Tuesday, the Leafs and the Islanders flip-flopped home games. The Leafs will play on Long Island later this month, and then it was not okay. Adam Fox was not on the team. I thought he was, but I'm sorry. So the Leafs had a home game against the Islanders in late January. Now they're playing at the UBS.
Yeah, Fox wasn't on the team.
I know. I just said that.
You did? Oh, I missed that. Sorry.
Yeah. And shows how much you're listening to me.
Yeah. Well.
and the Leafs will play. The Islanders will visit Toronto in April. Now they've moved the New Jersey Devils game that was on the 17th to they postponed it. They're going to schedule it at a later point. So right now, the Leafs have one more game in January, and the Habs have one more game in January, and both of them are against Anaheim. They could reschedule that one, but the thing is, it depends on whether Anaheim has enough of a time frame for them to come to Quebec and Ontario later in the season. So they may end up playing those games with no fans in the stands. But right now, it's like I think most of these Canadian teams, Russ, are going to be playing most of January outside of Canada because Canadian cities are limiting or completely eliminating fans.
Yeah, I mean, I've already heard the whining that, well, now that they have to go play in the U.S., they're in a disadvantage. They're not necessarily at a disadvantage. They'll have all these home games towards the end of the season, which could be an advantage. So,
yeah, that worked out for the Islanders, didn't it?
So I don't know. I don't know how it's going to really work out, but they got to keep playing. Like at the end of the day, you go look at the Flyers team right now that's going to go up against the Penguins. It's crazy. The lineup is crazy. It's half of Lehigh now. So it is what it is right now.
Okay, so the big news that has come out over the last 24 hours is, and it's not a shock because we've been speculating about this since he sort of semi-retired or had the hip surgery that I think it was a labrum surgery, that Tuukka Rask will be back with the Bruins. He signed a PTO to play in Providence, and Elliot Friedman just mentioned on the radio about an hour ago that the plan is for him to play a few games in the AHL, and then by next week sign a 1-year contract with the Bruins.
At the Dunkin' Donuts Center, I've been there.
Is that where Providence plays? Okay. So he'll play 2 or 3 games in the AHL and then come up, and they will send Jeremy Swayman down to the AHL. And an interesting thing.
No, they're going to send Swayman down for Rask?
Yeah.
No.
Since Swayman is on his ELC and is waiver exempt, he can't play on the practice squad.
Right.
On the taxi squad, he can't play.
That's fine. He's better off playing anyway.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why they want the young guys to actually play. So
yeah.
But I mean, this isn't a surprise, and I mean the Bruins they have to make up a lot of games. So having 2 veteran goaltenders in Ullmark and Rask could help them down the stretch.
Well, I mean, look, at this point, with the games in hand that they had and the points that they did manage to get, they're in a catbird seat. Their destiny is in their own hands. So again, I go back and default and say there is 1 playoff spot for 4 teams. That's really what we're looking at. I don't expect any of the top 3 in the Metro to falter to the point where they fall out of the playoffs. I'm not even sure they're going to fall out of any of those positions. They might rotate positions in those top 3, but that's probably it. But again, wild card wise, Boston's going to make it. I mean, I didn't think they would be that good this year, but they've surprised me, and I don't think there's any reason now with the goaltending they have that they're not going to hang in there. So based on that, Mike, you're talking about, nobody thinks Detroit will be in the playoff hunt, but right now they are. And then you're talking about the Flyers, and you're talking about the Devils. The Blue Jackets are still really in this, especially if they were to make moves at the deadline. And then maybe the Islanders, but I'd say no.
And I've, in sort of tracking what's going on with the Bruins recently, a player that's been called up and is actually scoring at a fairly decent pace is Oskar Steen, and somebody who we know from watching Sweden in the World Juniors. He's got 4 points in 5 games. And he's been not wallowing, but he's been, sort of developing at the American Hockey League level. So, I mean, he, so far, I mean, it's a small window. I'm not saying all of a sudden he's a superstar, but, he's contributing for them.
Yeah, no, he is. Tony Soprano went there and talked Tuukka for Raycroft again. I mean, it's like, how many, this is the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, yeah. I've said it on the show before. I covered him in the World Juniors, and I said, this kid is a number 1 goalie in the NHL. Like, he's going to be really good. I still can't fathom why the Leafs did that. I still can't fathom it.
It's not the Leafs. It was John Ferguson Jr., who's a complete idiot.
But it was the Leafs.
And I know I'm fully aware of that. But again, that's a tip of the hat to the interim general manager in Boston at the time, who was Jeff Gorton. So that was a great move by him.
They went to go work for the Bruins.
Right, JFJ is working for. So basically, what it proves to you is that JFJ was a double agent all along. Oskar Steen had 20 points in 16 games for Providence, and now has scored 4 points in 5 games. So he's 23 years old. Yeah, I mean, he's good start of the season and a good, good work so far. But like you said,
they need other scoring. So if they can bring up some guys and get hot, that's a big deal for them.
Now, the Tampa Bay Lightning play again tonight. They've been, after getting swept by the by the Rangers. They've played pretty well. And Nikita Kucherov finally returns. Braden Point returned last week. Now they get Kucherov back, and they've been first place in the Atlantic without those two. Gee, they're going to really be troubled with them in the line.
But again, would it shock you if, like, I don't know, last month in the season, for half of it, they just go in the tank a little and they don't end up in first in the division? I could see that happening.
Maybe, but I mean, there is a benefit to finishing in first.
There is a benefit, but they won't push it to the point where if they feel like rest is better, they're going to go for the rest.
Yeah, no, and unlike some of the teams in Canada, they've played, I think it's 35 games, so they're on schedule, and they may end up having games being rescheduled in that 3-week break to lessen the burden, or to play some of the Canadian teams or whatever. I mean,
if I were them, sports science wise, I would be working with Stamkos that way.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to give him and Hedman a rest for a playoff run, that would be smart. We're going to do a shorter show because Eck had some issues. That
people
with the weather. Right. Well, we can answer a couple questions, but I just wanted to bring this up because we heard about this breaking this morning. The New York Times is buying The Athletic for $550 million. Now, we have a lot of people that we know, a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues who write for The Athletic. I don't know whether this is going to be good news for them, because whenever there's a takeover like this, usually the first thing that happens is that they cull the herd. They will fire or lay off a bunch of people, and I hope that doesn't happen. Personally, in terms of being a subscriber to The Athletic, I've had an ongoing issue with their business model, simply because as somebody who subscribed to them early on, and I subscribe and I pay, $40, $45 a year, it's really insulting that they go out there and they're offering subscriptions for like $12 a year, or even free as part of, what is it, T-Mobile or AT&T or something like that, whatever subscription. I think that blows. I think that's terrible. Plus, I'll tell you right now, I don't have a lot of respect for the New York Times. I know they have a great reputation. The old gray lady. That's not the paper that it used to be. It's gotten very, very circumspect in certain areas that I won't go into.
Yeah, but they're still strong in other areas. Like, they're still reputable. I think this is good news for some writers, because they'll get to keep their jobs rather than if The Athletic went under. And so that's good. I think it's bad news for probably some of the high salary guys that might get cut, because they're going to look to do that. Like, it's just, there's no way around it. The Times is going to try and integrate probably some writers that they have already under contract onto The Athletic. Like, that's what I would do. And that's what businesses usually do. So, yeah, I expect there'll be changes. And look, we knew that this model was going to be a tough one to keep going. And maybe the Times, I will say this, of all the companies, Mike, on the internet, newspaper-wise, the Times have been the best as far as subscriptions. They're the ones that figured it out first.
Well, I mean, if you factor that in with how many times I see New York Times commercials on YouTube, every time I don't have the YouTube Plus or whatever, the Pro version or whatever, so I have to wait through the commercials, and I swear to God, every time it's a New York Times commercial, no matter what I'm watching. So it's annoying. But anyway, God knows I'm so it's so tough to annoy me. Okay, goalie FP in the chat says, who do you feel the Rangers will target at the deadline? Right wing, defense, specific players?
I think the Rangers will be in on Sherrod too. I do. I think they have a lot of assets. I think that Patrick Nemeth plays too much, and if you could replace Nemeth with Sherratt, that's a hell of a thing. And it won't be exactly like that because Sherratt will play higher up in the lineup, and you probably drop down Keandre Miller, and that's fine too.
And I wish we had Pete here, but for some reason I remember Sherratt playing with Trouba
It's possible.
In Winnipeg.
And if that's the case, then that's another.
Because Trouba played the right side, even though he's a lefty. He played the right side.
I mean, now will he be willing to do that again? Because he had that whole thing. If he is, if you have Trouba and Sherratt, and you have Fox and Lindgren, now you've got a team that's really formidable. So I think they're going to go for that. Would they like a depth center, a bottom six center? Yeah, they would. If you could replace Greg McKegg or Hedl at this point, they would do it.
Now, I mean, I know that you mentioned previously the Evander Kane speculation. That would all be dependent on San Jose and maybe even a third team filtering.
I still think the possibility exists.
Yeah, filtering his $7 million salary, because I mean, right now the Rangers have the cap space to be able to add him, but the thing is, you have to be able to fit him going forward, and they have contracts like Fox's contract is going up from his ELC to $9.5 million, so they're not going to have that cap space next year, and Kane has 3 more years after this year. It's $7 million. So no, Trouba is a lefty. He's a lefty who played the right side. He's not a righty. Jake in the chat.
No, he says he's a lefty. Oh, not a lefty. Sorry.
He said Trouba is not a no. Trouba is a left shot who did play the right side in Winnipeg.
Both sides. He did it begrudgingly in Winnipeg. That's what I was referring to.
Mike Tinkle. Sorry.
Don't laugh at a guy's last name.
Well, if that's your real name, I apologize. If it's not, that's funny. Would Nick Leddy fetch a first rounder if traded at the deadline? Depends on who.
Yeah, I think so. If you're talking about one of the 5 best teams in the league, and this pick is somewhere between like 27 and 32, yeah, they'll part with their first rounder.
Looking something up. No, okay. I apologize. He's a right-hand shot.
He is? Okay. See, I got fooled on that too. Probably because we saw him play the other side and we got fooled.
Right. So, but Sherratt is a lefty, and that I mean that lends to the possibility.
Well, there you go.
Let's see here.
Good job, Jay.
Wait, the Funky's like the Oilers could use anybody who could skate on defense. Yeah. That's how bad their defense is. I mean, I watched Cody Ceci last night. That guy is an abomination right now.
If you put Andy Green on the Oilers, he'd play a lot more.
The second best defenseman on the Oilers after watching last night, I've watched a few games with them. Darnell Nurse is their best. Their second best is the Evan Bouchard.
No question about it.
Okay. Now Barry didn't play, and Barry is an offenseman. He's a puck mover, a power play guy. So if that's what your role is for him, then he's fine. But you've got guys like, I mean, Russell didn't play last night, but you got guys like Lagesson and Duncan Keith, who I barely noticed last night. And
we noticed them offensively a little bit.
Yeah. And Ceci. I mean,
we know Ceci, like, you have to admit it.
But I'm telling you right now, Ken Holland has to answer for trading Ethan Bear. Because you tell me that Ethan Bear wouldn't play on that blue line, of course he would.
Unless they never had any intention of paying.
Right.
When's his contract up?
His contract with Carolina. Sorry, just clicking here. Hold on a second. Okay, Bear is $2 million this year, and then he's a arbitration right eligible.
Right. So they probably just didn't want to go down that road. They should have.
Let's see here. I don't know who Ben is talking about here. Oh, Hurdle. Would Cheadle and a first round pick for be a deal for?
No, they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I think they're going to get
a better prospect than that.
Hurdle. If they're trading Hurdle, San Jose is going to get the usual return for a top flight rental, and that's a player, a prospect, and a number one.
Now, if it was Kakko, you could get away with Kakko and a number one.
Yeah, and see, the thing is, if you're trading Kakko, then you're probably wanting to re-sign Hurdle.
Correct.
But that would depend on, okay, that, since you have Zibanejad making, what is he making in the eights?
Yeah.
That Hurdle would have to come in. Let's see, Zibanejad 8.5 starting next year. So, you would want Hurdle to agree to something probably in the 6 range, and then you would let Strome walk.
Right.
But the problem is, I don't know if Hurdle is going to take that because, he can get a lot more than that on the open market. I mean, he's making 5, 6.
I'll say this: as far as Kravtsov, like goalie FP saying, Kravtsov in that deal, they wouldn't want him. They need players. There's other teams that would take Kravtsov, and if he says, "Yeah, I'll come over in a year or so," they'd be okay with that. The Sharks can't do that, especially for Hurdle. It wouldn't. The look would be bad for them.
Yeah. Funky is asking about whether Grice would be a good fit to back up Jari. Since I don't think Casey DeSmith blows.
They like him there, Funky. I do think if they didn't like him, that deal that you're saying makes sense. But they like Casey DeSmith.
Yeah. Final question here. Matthew in the chat says, what moves should the Flyers make at the deadline? Giroux, JVR, Brassard. Interestingly, Friedman on the radio show this morning said if he had to bet, he would think that Giroux is going to get traded.
Well, I think last couple of weeks, Giroux has definitely been more annoyed. The last game, in between the first period, he was pretty terse and was really not happy with the club, the way they were playing. He's clearly playing at a different level than a lot of the other players there, and he's not able to bring them up with him, but he's trying. I do think that could wear on him, but he does have a couple of kids, and he does want to stay in the area. So I really do think if the Flyers are smart, they start negotiating with him so they can see where they get to by the deadline. Because if they're out of it and he really wants to get paid like top money, then they're going to trade him. Like that's going to happen. JVR, it's nice to say you're going to trade him, but you're going to have to eat some money, and Comcast may not want to do that. So that's a tough one. Fletcher is on thin ice. And so for him to go to his boss and say, hey, we want to trade JVR, but we're going to have to eat 50% of that. I don't know if Dave Scott's going to go for that. Broussard's, he's not going to get you a lot. Justin Braun would get you a lot. If they have to trade Justin Braun because all of a sudden the Flyers fall out of it,
well, that's a lot. A second-round pick?
A second-round pick or a good prospect, either way. And I think at this point the Flyers would take the good prospect because they do still need to have more guys than they have funneling through their system. But I will say this. There's been a lot of discussion recently about, this guy Dan Silver, who I've been on a show that he's been on, said he found out from a scout that, Hextall turned down Pasternak because he wanted Sanheim. Okay, that may be true, but I also have to tell people that a lot of teams passed on Pasternak because he was playing at the Czech Elite League. He was skinny. He was a risk. And not every team is willing to take that much risk with first rounders, especially when you're rebuilding. If you want to blame Hextall and Chris Pryor is part of that staff, if you're going to blame him for that, you can't blame him for all the other players that they have filled in this lineup with a great draft. So it's like, decide which side you want to be on. The Flyers could have been the Edmonton Oilers and had Pasternak and not a lot of other great players, or they could have the players they have, which means they have a lot of players in the system, but none are a superstar. It's hard to draft a superstar. I mean, it just is. You could draft in the top 10 every year and never get a superstar for like 5 years. That's just the way it goes. Like Matthews, and Austin Matthews isn't in the draft every year.
Yeah.
It's just, okay, we talked about Nugent Hopkins. I mean, he's not even close to a superstar. I looked at that draft, and Gabriel Landeskog is way better than Ryan Nugent Hopkins for everything he brings to the table. And Huberdeau is probably better than Nugent Hopkins. So, I mean, again, that's what happens in the draft.
Yeah, it's when you're bad and who is available. And like, okay, the Leafs.
Right. So here's the way it goes, though. So when you're bad and you have sold your franchise on a rebuild, and if you take a first-round pick that looks iffy, telling you, back then, there would have been a lot of heat for taking Pasternak. Sure, it would have worked out,
He was
but you
picked in
don't
the
know that it's going to work out.
He was picked in the 20s, so it's like, I mean, but you know, when you're talking about the top of the draft, if you're lucky like Edmonton, you know, the year that you're bad and the year that you win the lottery, you get McDavid. If you're lucky like the Leafs, the year that you're bad and you win the lottery, you get Matthews. You know, New Jersey won the lottery in 2017, and I'm not saying this guy's a bad player, but you know, they got Nico Hischier, and Nico Hischier in those drafts would probably be a 4th or 5th overall pick.
Yeah,
You know, in that
I
draft,
think
he
it's fair
was,
to say. I mean,
and
that's,
you know,
go ahead.
no, and do you think New Jersey is, even though they like Nico Hischier, even though he's a good kid and he's having, you know, he's you know, he's only 23 years old and he's going to have a really good career. Do you think they're kicking themselves that they passed on Cale Makar or Miko or Miro Heiskanen or Elias Pettersson? Maybe.
Listen, teams passed on Heiskanen, right? I mean, it's not like
Philadelphia did.
Yeah, but other, you know, I mean, there's when you're selling your franchise on a rebuild, it's hard to be risky. It is. And I'm telling you, there was a lot of risk when it came to Pasternak. Yes, he had the flash. Yes, he was very skinny. You didn't know what was going to happen when he came to North America. And so they decided not to take the risk. Travis Sanheim's a really good player. He's not David Pasternak.
Yeah,
that's the way he goes.
Pasternak was selected 25th. There's one player who was drafted ahead of him that has not played a game in the NHL still. Connor Bleakley.
Yeah, and he may never.
But, you know, you redraft that draft, he's either the 2nd or 3rd pick.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And he wasn't in the Czech Elite League. He was actually playing in Sweden.
Yeah, he was buddies with Nylander. I mean, I think they
played.
That's
right. But look at the numbers. The year before he was drafted, he had 8 goals and 24 points in 36 games. From there, how are you supposed to know he's going to be a 40-goal scorer or a guy who could score 40 or even 48?
Right.
Tricky, man.
Well, I mean, he as a 16-year-old, he had 29 points in 36 games for that same team, but that was the junior level team.
That's the junior team, correct?
Yeah, and as an 18-year-old, he had 24 points in the 2nd level.
That's the 2nd level, right?
Yeah. So
yeah, and look, and now he's 190 pounds, and he was like 160 then.
And he drinks a lot of coffee.
It all helped him, Mike.
Yes. All right. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just